Here I am, going live. Not one soul here. Hey, Marlo. So I'm not too sure, like whether I should have really thought this out, but I can just talk to the camera because I could talk. I could talk for England. Um, so this Facebook Live is about me kind of inviting people to ask me questions about, you know, relationship dilemmas, relationship challenges, and the, what they may benefit from in terms of their thinking about looking for love. And one of the reasons why I'm passionate about this is because this is the stuff we're not taught in schools. No one teaches us about relationships and love. Let me just turn this heat off. And I think it's really important to have the discussion to help us to navigate this kind of unwritten experience where people don't necessarily, we're not taught. So if we're not taught about it, we end up kind of just walking in blind and then have to kind of work it out backwards. And at times that can be very difficult and very hard, very life changing. Sometimes we can get into relationships where we may feel trapped, or we may keep repeating the same patterns again and again and again. And that is, oh, Patricia, thank you. Appreciated it. Okay, so this is how it works. Um, and so I think, I'm passionate about helping people. I know that, in terms of my field, there's lots of stigma about talking to people like me. And I think one of the things that I am most passionate about is helping people to like making psychology like breaking it down, making it very normal so that we get it, like it's okay. And it's okay. Like, it doesn't mean that you're mad or anything's wrong, because we know if we stay in relationships that are not healthy for us, this can lead to things like depression, anxiety, and so on. So, hello, Jessica, Jenissa, Patricia, Marlo. Thank you. Glad you're here. Um, you're here. Um, any questions? Being out loud here. So one of my ambitions is really to make psychology, psychotherapy, mental health, which isn't a term that I often use because of the stigma, just more relatable to everyday challenges. And my insights have come from, my inspiration has come from my own experience, where I was in a situation where I was like, wow, this is hard. This is very difficult, which is where I've got to the point where I am today, where I began to read, I began to study. So I'll be keen to take any of your questions about love, relationships, or, so as ever, be mindful about what you want to share, because this is public. So it's important that you're aware of how much vulnerability you're going to expose in terms of yourself. Hey, Patricia, Marlo, hello. Um, so, my encouragement to you is you need to be aware of that. But if you've got kind of, questions, queries, patterns that you find unhelpful, or why you find them, why you keep finding yourself again and again in similar situations, then feel free to ask me. Now, as I said before, this is my first Facebook Live. I'm getting hearts and thumbs. I feel so privileged. I'm loving that. However, I have no questions to ask. So I'm just going to keep talking. And well, I'll tell you about one of the reasons why I'm particularly keen to focus my career in the area of love is because love has a massive bearing upon the quality of our life and our lives. And so if we're not aware, if we're not woke about that, let's just call it what I believe it to be true. Someone going to ask me a question, and I'm going to really have to just keep talking to the screen all by myself. Or am I getting it wrong? Oh, we've got to scroll down, Key. Oh, thank you. Glad you're here. Joined. Yes. So, like I said, we're not taught this stuff. And I think if we're not careful, if we don't understand, we can get ourselves into very difficult situations that can have a very detrimental experiences on our life. So that's my story, that I didn't realize like loving the wrong person could create such mayhem. But actually I've come out the other end because that got me to read the Jan Levansant books. So my first book was In the Meantime. And that then has got me to the point where I decided to educate myself. I decided that I would just pursue psychology, pursue psychotherapy, and just keep pursuing what I love. And so today, in my private business, that's what I do. Thank you, Patricia. I got a question. Why do I always seem to find myself in bad relationships? Well, I think you need to define what you think is bad, because at some level, that relationship will serve a purpose for you. And I think we need to be very clear about that no matter what, in situations where we're in relationships and you may deem it to be bad, I think people really struggle with this one. I believe that actually it serves, there must be something in that relationship that benefits you. And so that would be my question to you, which is very challenging, is what benefit do you get from that relationship? Well, that's a weird question, right? From that relationship is right back at you. And I think even for myself, that was one of the biggest challenges that I had, because I know people don't always like this. When I was in the dark, I was a victim. And oh my God, how could I love like this? How could I love like how Celine Dion talks about in the songs and they mistreat me? How dare they do this to me? And I think for me, In the Meantime, that book, I put it in the comments, was the first place that ever said, like, you need to check yourself, because actually, you're actually allowing this to happen to you. And I found that very difficult, very perplexing, but it really stoked my interest in terms of self-responsibility. So I hope that helps. It can be with colleagues, etc. Okay, so if you're talking about in terms of with colleagues, so if you can say you continuously find yourself in bad relationships, well, the challenge, and I hope you can brace yourself for that, is the common denominator is it's going to be us. So if we continuously find ourselves in repeating relationship patterns, then my encouragement to you, well, I guess firstly, define bad. What does bad mean to you? Define what bad means to you. Do I need to type that? What bad means to you? But if you continuously find yourself in similar relationships, then the common denominator is actually you. So it would be for you to think about, is there some behavior that I display that lets people know it's acceptable to treat me in a bad way? So that's my encouragement to you, is to think about, so the challenge that you may have with anyone speaking to me, I think is a challenge sometimes, is that I'm going to always be encouraging you to go back to yourself, to think about what is it that I do that also might feed into that. So I don't know if that's helpful to you, Patricia. Claire, Why do people assume self-love is selfish? People assume self-love is selfish because it's inconvenient for them when, for example, self-love really should be accompanied by things like boundaries. It depends on your personality, but also being assertive in your communication. So being clear with people about how you feel, because our feelings are our own. So no one has the right to tell you how you feel. You need to own how you feel. So I do a video on assertive communication. If anybody's interested, I could put that in the link. But in terms of that, so if people think self-love is selfish, it's because they are not benefiting from you. They don't benefit. Your self-love is a hindrance to them. So if you're starting to prioritize yourself, that means that you're not prioritizing others. And that's when you usually get those little punchlines that people throw at you when you put boundaries in place to say, you know what, not today. Today I'm doing ABC. And additionally, Claire, if people tell you that self-love is selfish, that can sometimes be linked to people being comfortable with us saying yes to them. And when we do that, that kind of leads to that yes person personality, which we know as a therapist, I know that, you know, when we become a yes person, the kind of shadow side of that is in the end, it means it can feed into things like depression as we become disconnected from our own needs. And if you continuously give to others, and then nothing comes back, that's where we can become depleted, and that's where the common mental health problems kick in, like anxiety, depression, because that, to me, is my perception of it. That's our body saying to us, that's our body communicating to us, all is not well. And so self-love will feel selfish because firstly, you won't even be used to prioritizing yourself if you continuously put everybody else's needs first. So I hope that's helpful. Let me know. I got questions. I got questions. I'm so glad. Okay, so here we are. What's the other? It will be colleagues. Define what bad means to you. Do they find me or do I find them? Do people, negative people, find you or do you find them? I am a massive believer in the law of attraction. And I know for myself, as someone who was enticed by guys that were exciting and guys that were challenging, the more I've shifted and I have shifted my gaze away from that excitement, we pass by like ships in the night. So I'm no longer pulled by them. And I guess they can pick up on I'm not tuned into them and they're not tuned into me. So we do pass. So I think, again, Patricia, it's back to the question of what purpose does that serve you in your life? And I think you need to be careful. You need to be mindful of that. You know, if you've got bad people in your life, what energy do you give to them? Because this is a cycle. And if you're not feeding the cycle doesn't continue. So that is the uncomfortableness, is that it's about taking responsibility for yourself. And that's going to be a challenge because that takes us out of victim mode. And I'm always preaching to be a victor over your circumstance rather than a victim. And I know that can be very uncomfortable for people. And I hear that. But as I say, my inconvenient truths, some truths are inconvenient. So, see, I have to, well, I'm just giving the word. Literally came out of, this is Marlo, literally came out of social media, high school fibrination. So happy to find this evening, Wednesday session. Oh, thank you for the love, Marlo. I don't know if I need to type this, maybe. Thank you for the love, Marlo. You got a question though, Marlo. Do you have a question? Because it's all about, you know, love is such a big thing. Love is a massive, massive thing. And my interest is always in intimate relationships. And I'll tell you why I'm always interested in intimate relationships, because intimate relationships are a window into our love and our regard for ourselves. And so that's why intimate relationships will always, always, always fascinate me. Easy. Susie B is online. So I have no more questions. Oh my Lord, what am I going to do? I'm going to dry up. Never that. I've always got something to say. Um, so yeah, like there's so many areas that I could have specialized in. And if I'm very truthful, what I think I've got from my career is almost like a buy one, get one. So I've studied the areas of psychology that I've struggled with the most. So I feel like I've had um, a really great benefit from that, because not only have I grown and been able to understand my own behavior, I've been able to study that in depth as well, which I think is something that has given me a very privileged life. And so, you know, often I believe, often I think about my darkest moments. I had nowhere to go, and I was often judged, ridiculed. People always had something to say, and that judgment actually became something that isolated me. And I think if, we have to be careful about our relationships, should we feel isolated because, hey, Lefleur, oh, bless you. If you become isolated, especially in a relationship that is manipulative or controlling, it's a recipe for disaster. And so, if you continuously share your woes and your challenges with your friends and get bored, like, oh my God, this guy's again, she can't talk about anything, then that is also something to be mindful of, to pay close attention to. Marla's giving me a question. Yes, I do. How can I balance? Giving too much. Can anyone love too much? You can most definitely love too much. That question's got levels to it. So I'm just very mindful of the forum, that we're on. But giving too much can often be linked to, there's a need that's being met in yourself. When you love too much, when you give too much, it potentially is, it's like you're overcompensating. And so if you love too much and you notice it's like, you give, you get crumbs, you give, you get crumbs. Well, shall we do deep? Shall we go deep? Shall we go deep? Let me ask. Shall we go deep? Shall we go deep? Because we can keep it superficial, or we can do. Shall we do deep? The depth of it is there's a value in helping. There's a massive value in helping people, and your ego, let's do deep, may get fed by that. So actually, it may feel good for you to go above and beyond because you want to prove to somebody that you are caring, loving, helpful, kind, and to some degree, indisposable. Because at some level, our ego may think that that person will never do without us, that they need us in their lives. So sometimes giving abundantly can be connected to our need to be needed. And so, what I would encourage you to do, if you find that you overly love and you give too much, then I would encourage you to catch yourself, practice saying no. And that is a real challenge. Learning how to say no. I remember I began seeing an individual and he had a problem. And I used to be the problem solver. I would make other people's problems my own. And that was at the time when I started to study. And then I realized I was about to catch myself going into the same loop. And so what I did was I asked the 5WH questions: what, when, where, how. Somebody else correct me. There's always someone out there who corrects. I would ask that person questions. They were coaching questions to get them to find the solutions to their own problem, because I went around helping everybody and I put myself in a situation, I put myself in debt. So what I learned to do was that actually was very unhelpful for me. And so like my coaching, counseling skills meant that I would then start to ask somebody questions. And I think practice it, you've got to learn to catch yourself. So before you give, be asking yourself questions such as, what do I get from that? And one other way to access yourself is to not give, and then to capture the voice that you hear in your head. And I always tell people to voice note me. Voice note me, I can give you my number, what you say to yourself, because that is beautiful evidence of your inner voice. And your inner voice is fundamental. It's fundamental you get to hear your inner voice, because that language dictates dictates your relationship with yourself. So that's my encouragement. I hope that makes sense. Thank you, Claire. What type of psychology do you practice? So I did a 4-year degree. I studied psychology across the board. And then I specialized in person-centered psychotherapy. So I did person-centered. So whilst my mentors encouraged me to do they encouraged me to do CBT because they felt that that would be a great way for me to get a job. What I realized was, I felt that there was aspects of it I found really important. I used to deliver CBT groups in prison, so I had a very solid understanding of it. But in terms of depth, I felt that it wasn't what resonated with me. And when I read Carl Rogers' Person-Centered Psychotherapy, it spoke to my experience. And the challenge with that was none of that training was funded, so you had to fund it yourself. So, your girl had to dig deep to find a way. So, and I did find a way. So I chose to study Carl Rogers' Person-Centered Psychotherapy, which is about that actually you have the answers that you need. The answers are always within. So my duty as a therapist is always to help people find the answers for themselves. So I hope that helps you, Patricia. LaFleur, can someone love 2 people at the same time? Yeah, I believe someone can love 2 people at the same time. I think what's the most important thing is that monogamous? No, it's not mono is one. Polygamy, poly something. You could Google that. And in different cultures, it's acceptable for someone to have multiple wives. I'm not here to judge that. I think it's about what works. And I think if you're in a relationship where someone has, is juggling, let's say, you have to work out whether that works for you. So I believe someone can love someone more than once, more than one person, most definitely. We also have to be mindful about what Walt Disney has conditioned us with about love and fantasies of love and all of that stuff, because some of that stuff has got us thinking some superhero is coming to rescue us, and he ain't arrived yet, and I'm 41 now, so I don't know if that is likely to really happen. PB, Patricia, you loved too much. I don't know. I don't know. Can you ever love too much? I think if it's, the challenge is, if you feel you love too much, like if you have a loving nature, you have a loving nature. And to go against your nature, I think, is very difficult. The challenge is often caring, kind, compassionate people, sadly, let's say interestingly, are often drawn to our bipolar opposites. That's the duality, night, day, up, down. So if you're someone who's, you give a lot, it's often likely that you might find people who are very needy, sometimes selfish, and then you bestow all that love upon them. And I think that's one of the reasons why I'm really about helping people to understand this whole concept of love and relationships, because if you don't understand that actually by giving abundantly, it serves a need in me, then you're likely to do yourself harm, So I don't think it's about loving too much. I think it's about knowing when you're sowing seeds in unfertile ground. And that's where the self-love comes in, because we know, hold on, we're throwing seeds here, and this is not going to germinate. I'm just going to keep throwing love at this, and nothing here is going to grow. And sometimes, ladies, because I don't think there's any men here, we think we can love him enough, care enough, do enough, and that somehow miracles will happen and he would change. He would change because they want to change. Thanks for acknowledging the inner voice. Almost definitely. The inner voice is key. You need to understand your inner voice. And that's one of the reasons why I encourage my clients, anyone I'm working with, to voice note me, because at least then you've got documented evidence of what is going through here. Because what we say to ourselves, our inner voice determines our thoughts, determines our behaviors, determines our life experience. And so if you don't check your inner voice, you know, in my book, Why Love Hurts, which is being edited today, I talk about, I call that voice the Cruella de Vil. We need to understand our Cruella de Vil. And if you have an exceptionally harsh inner critic, then that voice is actually your worst enemy, which is why I'm always talking about the greatest enemy is within. I could do a talk on inner voices all day long. I absolutely love that. Greetings, Nelly. How are we? What do you say here? You said Julie. Noted. Say no. Catching myself. I'm aware, in fact, the 5 whys. Yes, most definitely. When you ask those what, when, where, how, if you are a perpetual giver, if for whatever reason you've been brought up that you must care and consider everybody else, then it's highly likely that you will have poor boundaries because it's the way you've been conditioned. And so one way to stop ourselves from naturally making other people's problems our own is to start asking them questions. So then you start to elicit from them what they think the solution is for themselves. Because some people, we have to be mindful, know that you have a caring, kind nature, and so they'll be drawn to you for that. And that's okay if it works for you. But if it becomes imbalanced, then when we start to ask people what, when, where, how, we are eliciting from them rather than going into our own problem solving motion for them. Because what you'll find is, and I found this when I let a certain relationship go because I thought he needed me and I was the only one who could love as hard as I did and give as much as I got. I think the last insult was a car I took out on finance. Was that actually when you stop, those people are pretty great at finding someone else to replace you. They're pretty great at finding someone else to replace you. So that can be a very harsh wake-up call if your whole ego is built upon being the good girl that is rescuing people. So I think it's good that we kind of like very much aware of that. And we have to, in my view, take steps to safeguard ourselves and our heart. So Patricia said, so true. What is so true, Patricia, about the inner voice? Oh yeah, you need to have, if you've got a harsh, talk about the inner voice, if you have a harsh inner critic, then the antidote to that is to develop the kind inner friend. So that's another part of you. So I often encourage people to think about characters, maybe characters from films, cartoons. So, you know, I call that harsh inner critic Cruella de Vil, but what might you call the compassionate side of you? What is a lovely character that would sum that up? I think Mary Poppins. She had boundaries though. But Mary Poppins, who would you call your kind inner friend? Because sometimes that harsh inner critic is another voice that feeds things such as anxiety and depression. So we need to be very, very careful about that voice. Scapegoats. You know what? I need to write an article about scapegoats because it's coming up a lot. Yeah, scapegoats are usually the truth tellers in families. They're the children who usually say what they see, and then they don't conform to a kind of group psychology, which is one of, we don't speak like that here. So scapegoats get a very rough deal. And often what happens to scapegoats is they blame themselves. Their decision-making process is often very vulnerable because the parenting style that they've had is one of self. They've learned to self-doubt. So they doubt themselves. They doubt their truth. So usually, if that comes up in therapy, I will know a whole raft of things that will happen to the scapegoats. But scapegoats have a real hard time believing in themselves. So they second guess themselves. And often being a scapegoat can feed into an inferiority complex. I don't know how to spell that, but I give it my best go. I don't even have like dyslexia or anything. I just think writing on computers nowadays has just done it to me. But being a scapegoat is harsh, and yeah, it does it shapes your experience, and undoing that, unfurling that, is very helpful for that to get to understand that. Define what bad means to. Oh, I'm way up here. So duly noted. Scapegoats. They look for the next supply. Who's they look for the next supply? Are we? Oh, you mean our friend? Are you talking about narcissists? You mean Knox? Well, Knox. Well, yeah, they are. Yeah, that topic never ceases to fascinate me because I'm empathic, and I think empathic people and narcissists are they're often drawn to each other, as bizarre as that may seem for people who've loved them and been incredibly hurt by them. It's something that I think empathic people need to be, I think we need schooling on it, because when you don't know about narcissism and you fall in love with such a character, it's absolutely bizarre, and you're absolutely walking around in the dark questioning yourself, which is why if left unchecked, it can lead to a breakdown. It can go the whole way to suicide, hopelessness, despair, because the manipulation, being questioned, doubting yourself, giving your all, and no matter what you do, bending over backwards, you never get it right. When that would happen, that happens, and people don't understand it, it's a hell. It's a hell. And I think when people discover the whole topic of narcissism, I know when I did, I was like, oh my God, light bulb moment. But I only found out about that when I was working in prison. And that wasn't even because of specific prison training about narcissists, where it was because there was just a very tricky individual, and it all seemed just like incredibly, there's something about him that was just very tricky. And so my mentor encouraged me to understand about that and read about narcissism. So I think highly sensitive people, empathic people, kind, caring people, often people in the caring professions, let me get my bonnet done, have to be particularly mindful of narcissists, because, like I said before, if I love them enough, care enough, give enough, then surely they'll change. And in addition to that, I think we also have to be careful, mindful that it's the modicum of crumbs, the modicum of the crumbs of validation that can also keep you running back and forth. And so this can often be, the foundations of us being able to stay in that kind of a one-way relationship, because let's call it what it is. It's a one-way relationship. You give your all and you get crumbs. But what anyone who's in such a relationship, what you need to be aware of is what hooked you in. What's the hook? What is it that they have tapped into inside of you that keeps you in the cycle? And I'm a big believer that until you understand the hook, even when you understand the hook, you may well still go back. But understanding the hook is very key to beginning to start to unpack the complexities of that relationship. And so if you're not aware, if you're not a woke empath, if you're not aware that actually I draw these people again and again and again to me, and that can be in a whole host of relationships, from work, boss, in your intimate relationships, even friendships and families, especially if you've maybe had a narc parent, then it takes some work. It is not easy. What can be a deadly combination, Joe? Hello, Gail. Oh, Gail turned up. That's lovely. Let me do this. I think I need someone to assist me with this. As an empath, now that I understand more about narcissism, I'm much better in managing me around them. They have an art of no, they don't have an art. They have an absolute gift. They are Oscar nomination worthy. What they have is a very elaborate mask, and should you begin to clock that it's a mask, when you begin to see through the facade, it's highly likely you're going to get problems, or you're going to get dropped, or you're going to get annihilated, depending on your situation that you're in with them. But they're incredibly manipulative, and they have some epic stories. I mean, if I think about some of the stories I've heard, I'm like, wow. But once I got clear about it and I caught myself, because you have to be able to catch yourself going into solution focus mode or whatever, or falling for the story. You've got to be able to catch yourself. Once you catch yourself, that can take time as well. Sometimes, you know, you might catch yourself in it and be like, oh shoot, look, I'm being manipulated again. But if you can get further and further woke, so you don't take the action, you'll be able to stand and see it happening. Yeah, that's my encouragement to you. You know, just get better at being woke, at being clear. So instead of jumping full force in, you get better and better at being able to observe it, and you don't take the actions. They do this love bomb thing. How does love bomb show up in your life? How does it? Because love bomb is very generic, but that's why you got to watch out. Them mans have got a lot of narcs and empaths are actually, as bizarre as that may sound to people, a very complementary combination. We know that the empath will come off worse. That's the truth. But from a non-judgmental perspective, we know that narcs get me every time. Of course they do, Patricia. You're perfect for them. It's interesting, right? You're perfect for them. You're perfect for them. And the reason why you're perfect for them is because they are they do seduction particularly well. There's a great book that I recommend called The Art of Seduction by Robert Greene, and I'm really not a fan of his work, but actually he breaks down the art of seduction particularly well. And I think if you're someone who keeps going back in that same loop, then you need to like have a read of that book. You always fall for the story. You always fall for the story. And the more woke you get, I need more. I think the more woke you get, you need to start to listen to the story. Just say, okay. I'm a big fan of the word okay. You say, okay. You got to tell them okay, because they are, let's be honest, often they're taking us for being gullible. And when they soon realize that we don't play the game, then you'll see a different side of them. So, yeah, I hope when I say you're perfect for them, I mean the kind of bipolar, you're not going to get a narc and a narc together. It's going to be pure mayhem. So the opposites attract. This giving person, love-giving person, loves to give, empathic, kind, considerate, and this selfish person who in the beginning puts you on a pedestal, who thinks you're the greatest things at sliced bread. And then within a certain amount of time, you're only getting crumbs of validation. And if we don't value ourselves, we'll keep going back. We'll keep going back to that. So I'm so tired of them. Well, yeah, I hear that. But I think sometimes we have to get to that point where we go no more. Absolutely no more. It's difficult to spot when you found it hard to trust. Everyone looks like an arc. I don't think so. I think that's the beauty of building a relationship with somebody. If you can build a relationship with someone, often relationships with individuals who are narcissistic, the relationship goes at breakneck speed. So it's like 1 from 100. All of a sudden, you've met the love of your life, and you know, like, it's rapid. It's very quick. And for me, I always liken that quickness to reverse parking. You know, when you're reverse parking, if you're doing it fast, you're going to hit the curb, you're going to hit the rims if you care about your rims, and you might be slightly out. There's a benefit to reverse parking when you do it slowly, slowly. So my encouragement to you, if you've had a history of relationships that are one-sided, or you've been perpetually drawn to narcissistic individuals and they're drawn to you, it's a two-way process. Yeah, it's a two-way process. The one benefit, one coping strategy can be to take things slow. That can be very difficult when our emotions get involved and we want to run with it and we want to feel it and we want to experience it. However, taking it slow is particularly beneficial. However, one of the reasons why those relationships can go so quickly is because of the intensity and often because they pedestal you. So if you're being pedestaled by someone who thinks you're absolutely wonderful, you're absolutely great, you know, it's not to say that we become like totally dismissive of somebody, but we have to be careful that if we don't feel so great about ourselves, then they may be tapping into an insecurity within you that can feed into your desire to be with that person. So that again is about being very clear about the hook. And if we're not clear about what has hooked us in, then it has the potential to be problematic for us. Best bees. What does best bees? Best bees budding me. So I hope that's helpful for you. This is really bizarre because I've been doing Zoom recently where people talk to me, but it actually just feels like I talk to myself. So I hope that helps people to understand. If you've got any other questions, in addition, like I said to you, it is definitely about the hook. It is also about, you know, and I think generally, if you're looking for a relationship, if you're looking for love, then I think these are the 6 areas that you need to be mindful of. The hook, what might hook you into somebody, what you're looking for. I think another aspect that you need to be mindful of is your boundaries and not feeling good enough. Not feeling good enough is a massive one. Not feeling good enough. Good enough is massive. That's why you got to rate you. Somebody said to me today, "You're amazing." I said, "Thank you." I know. Yes. And I could tell they wanted to say, "Oh, you're pretty sure of yourself." And I think, well, you don't know how much use of therapy I've had to be this confident. Thank you for the compliment. I know I'm amazing. So that is very helpful when you have a high esteem of yourself, when you hold yourself in regard. It's a buffer. Yeah, because it means that we're not seduced. Oh my God, he thinks I'm epic. He thinks I'm so amazing. And if you think you're rubbish and you don't rate yourself, then when someone comes along and talks some sweet talk in your ears, you're going to be highly vulnerable, because the truth is you don't rate yourself. And if we don't rate ourselves, it can be, well, it feeds into why we end up in, God, I need water, one-way relationships. And this is why I've created my workshop. I've called it my workshop, where I explore aspects of intimate relationships that are causing people challenges. And I see that again and again and again. Remember, I've been a therapist now for 2012. I qualified in 2012. So these are the kind of problems that show up again and again and again. And those issues are about the hook, what hooked us in to that unhelpful relationship, boundaries, not feeling good enough, again, is always massive. And that's why, you know, for me, it's not that I'm not drawn to narcissists anymore. They're not drawn to me, but I have confidence within myself. And I think not having confidence in yourself is a massive factor that feeds into those relationships. So you need to be careful, very mindful about that. And that's what I'm going to be exploring in my workshop on the 1st of June. You love my honesty. Oh, thank you, Marlo. You know, I feel like I don't have, I think I can only do well. I can only do well. I would really find it very difficult to be genuine about this because, you know, this is life and love that we are dealing with, and we know that that is not always, you know, it's not always an easy walk. And for me, if I could talk about my experiences, to me, then, you know, I'm not quoting anybody else, I'm not quoting books. You know, this is a walk I've walked. Key for Change isn't some sort of fancy name that I just created over there. It was about, you know, I have changed. I am Key for Change because I've had to walk that. So I've gone over 45 minutes because, as I said, I am a talker. But if this kind of material is good for people, give me a thumbs up or a heart. I haven't got one. Can I fund myself? I think I'll have to fund myself. You know, but like I said, hey, there's one. Thank you, girl. Hey, and hearts. If it's of benefit to you, then, you know, like I said, I'll be exploring this in greater detail at my workshop. Feel Loved. I'll put a link in the thread below, and that's on the 1st of June. And basically, it's just, you know, it's me bringing together my ideas. And well, actually, I've done a pilot study called Feel Loved, so it's more than my ideas. It's what I see time and time again, the factors that feed into us not getting the love that we deserve. And people, you know what, you've got, if you're anything like me, and I can own this, if you've got a lot of love to give, then I think you owe it to yourself to learn how to protect your niceness. Because if you don't learn how to protect your niceness, you can become a victim of it. Yeah, and to have a good, caring, loving heart is a beautiful gift, and we need it in this world because there's some dark days out there. There's some very dark days out there, I believe. And, you know, learning how to protect your gift, learning how to protect your heart is self-care, is self-love and self-preservation. And, you know, as I always say, if you don't take care of you, who will? So that's 47 minutes and 40 seconds. I am a talker. If anybody else has a question before I go, you can type now. And what I'm going to do in the meantime, hopefully my screen's still up, is just drop a link in there. Feel Loved. Oh, Eventbrite. Oh, no, I ain't got Eventbrite on this one. About my event that's coming up, which is all about feeling loved. Because actually, you know, that I think that's ultimately what we all are looking for. We all want to feel love. What is so true? If you put so true, sister, I don't know what is so true, sis. But you know, if we don't rate ourselves, and I think that is one of the number one challenges, is that people don't often rate themselves. And when we don't rate ourselves, someone is usually waiting in the wings to take advantage of that. Yeah, so it's about how can you be that for yourself, because that is fundamental. How can you give yourself the love? And I think, you know, we might say, oh, you know, oh, not narcissistic people are drawn to us. Yes, they may well be drawn to us, but one of the antidotes, just one of them, there are many, is having a high regard for you. You know, you having a high regard for yourself. Forget even having a high regard, developing the regard for yourself. Absolutely fundamental, and something that I'm a massive advocate about, absolute massive advocate about, which is, you know, if you think about like my videos, I'm usually always encouraging, yeah, man, protect your niceness. You like that one, sis? Yes, definitely. It's always about protecting your niceness, because if you don't, no one else ain't gonna protect your niceness. Let's make an hour. You know what? I think I should do an hour. You are right. Yeah, you are right. Sue, thank you very much. An hour. You're right, Sue, an hour. Who, but I feel like I need people to talk to me. I just feel like I'm talking at the computer for ages, but you guys have got, I'm used to Zoom. So this is, Will do. Yeah, I'm used to Zoom. I'm used to having people talk to me, not just talking at the computer. However, I hope it's been beneficial. And if anybody, I could just keep going for another 10 minutes. Said Joe, welcome. Um, I'll go for the hour, might as well because I'm nearly there. If you have any more questions, please do let me know. And you know, there's a lot of shame, there's a lot of stigma attached to this, and it's really so annoying. It's really so annoying. It's a bit like we've got Mental Health Week coming up next week, and I could do a talk on love all day long, because how we allow people to treat us and how we have been loved is fundamentally feeds into the quality of our lives across the board. So this isn't just about it impacting in our love relationships. It impacts on so many areas. Careers. Do we stay in certain jobs? Do we play down? Do we act small? Do other people keep getting leverage over us because we don't know our worth? And so for me, rate yourself, the 5 whys, learn to say no. You like that, Marlo? Bless you. And if you have any victories, please post your victories on my Facebook page or on my Key for Change page, because listen, everybody out here is battling. Don't watch people putting up these silly facades of living their hashtag best life. Yeah. Some of the love that I get just lifts my day and lets me know the sacrifices I continue to make to do what I do are definitely worth it. Sue, you are always so much full of so much encouragement of me, and I really, really thank you for this. Joanna Taverner, she's an advocate. I wonder why. You should do this on the regular. Thank you, sister. You're doing great. Do Knox know what they do? Oh, one of them questions. Knox. I don't know. Knox tend to avoid me now because I'm woke. Often narcissists, people with narcissistic tendencies, have often had traumatic childhoods. And so it's one of the ways that they've learned to cope with the nonsense, the harshness that they've experienced. And usually, if you're empathic and you're drawn to them, you'll know their story inside out. And it's their story that makes you justify the nonsense. So, I think, I don't know, sometimes I don't even care sometimes about, do they know whether they're doing. The reason why I say I don't know if I care anymore is, as my years have gone on and I've learned more about it, I'm more interested in why we tolerate them, why we indulge them. Because sometimes I found that as the person who's loved, I have spent, I think we could spend lots of time analyzing and understanding narcissism. But actually, what you miss is actually it's your self-esteem that has been fundamental, that has enabled you to stay in that relationship. So I guess that's one of the things that I've noticed, that actually narcissists do what narcissists do. And there's a benefit to understanding that. But I think the true key is understanding yourself, your self-esteem, the hooks, why you have no boundaries. I think that is far more fruitful a place to explore, Patricia. So I hope that's helpful to you. I think, it's like hurt people, let's call it that, because if you've come from a background where you may have not had healthy, wholesome love, then I think, it's kind of natural that that might be how you also operate in the world, because that's been your bedrock. But we also know other people can have been come from difficult backgrounds, and they can be particularly loving. And I think it's testament to the human spirit of how we survive. You know, life isn't easy, and there's not always a clear path. So I think my view would be that actually it's about how people survive, and ultimately it's about how we have to be mindful of ourselves. As my sister said, Joanna, we have to learn how to protect our niceness. And that, for me, is fundamental, that you get in touch with your inner voice. Because if you're not attuned to the things that you say to yourself, how you communicate to yourself, you are going to believe in yourself, incredibly vulnerable and incredibly open to, your hard drive is promoting negativity to you. So is 55.07. And I think if anyone has any further questions, feel free to ask, or if something here has triggered you and you want to have a conversation in private, I'll be around for the next half an hour or so. So feel free to inbox me, because I'm under no illusion that the severity of this on our lives, on the quality of our lives, is incredibly tremendous. So fundamentally, looking for love, is a beautiful thing. It's, looking for love, companionship, having healthy, wholesome relationships is a wonderful thing. However, if we've had a history of problematic relationships and we keep repeating the same cycle again and again and again, then it's most definitely about doing the work on yourself. And that's most definitely what I'm going to be promoting at my workshop, Feel Loved, because ultimately that's what we all want. So I'm going to rearrange to do my next live for an hour. And I think I'll probably get a special guest in as well, someone to help, because at least they can help with the typing while I do the talking. So I want to thank you to the people that have come and the people that have gone. I've ended on 5. See, I can hear my inner voice. Can you hear it, Key, saying, "Oh my gosh, only 5." And then my other compassionate, kind voice is like, 5 lives. Key, you touch lives every day, so don't watch the numbers. So that's just an example of how, that battle within. And I believe what is personal is often universal. However, I'm told that I'm one who's courageous enough to be able to share these things with people. And so I'm very much about helping people to kind of normalize stuff, because it's helpful. Because otherwise people start thinking, oh, something's wrong with me, or am I mad, am I crazy, am I losing it? Actually, a lot of this is very helpful. It's just that no one is teaching us about it. And so we're often left on our own, feeling shamed and embarrassed. And it's my hope that whether there's 5 people here or 5,000, that touching one life has such profound ripple effects. And I know that because someone touched mine one day when I was in my darkest moments. A new comment. People will watch after, sis. Oh, bless you, sister. Thank you, Joanna. Thank you. Thank you, Patricia, Marlo, people who have joined. Like I said, I want to thank you all so much. I feel like I've just been talking to myself in this room, to the camera. Should have probably tested it out, but I didn't. But hey, I love being spontaneous and in the moment. So I want to thank you for your support and encouragement. And like I said, if you need any assistance or you want to know about my Feel Love workshop, then inbox me or get hold of me. I'm not hard to find. I'm wishing you all the best. Take care of you, because if you don't, who will? Bye. End.